art menu kind of approach, and I think people are struggling with that. That's why there's critics who say that when people get their news online, they're getting really incomplete information. And they can, it certainly sounds like it. So what's the solution there? How do you make sure that your media menu is pretty diverse, I guess?
You know, and I don't know exactly how to make that true, because even for myself, I mean, I am the kind of person who, I get up, I look at the Wichita Eagle because I'm from Wichita. I you know, may jump on the New York Times or ABC News website or something to help get a more comprehensive view of what's going on. But at the end of the day, there are major stories that, because I don't watch the evening news, I just am a little slower to catch on to. So it's one of those things that makes you like aware that there's that need to fill, and that why your viewers may not be regularly, like, there are websites that I love for news and information, but I forget to go there. and that's what people say to me about State of the State. They were like, oh, every time I go there, I love it, but I only think about it twice or 3 times a month, you know. So one thing we did was we used Constant Contact, which is an email list, and people can sign up to get emails from us, and we send it out maybe a couple times a week. And it's more of a reminder, and it's also like with our little headlines of what's going on. I know that I think the Wall Street Journal uses them, and a couple other news organizations. I know ABC News has something like it.
You're also the most aggressive media source that I know of in using online social media. Every day my Facebook news feed and my Twitter feeds are filled with State of the State links. Have you found that drives traffic? I don't even know if you're doing metrics on that to really know where your traffic drivers are.
You know, I don't know the numbers exactly off the top of my head, but it is a good chunk of our viewing, I mean, our traffic source comes from Facebook, less from Twitter. I think I would say over maybe 1,500 viewers a month come from Facebook. So it's enough that it reminds people, and not every story interests them, but it kind of keeps us in their consciousness, so that on the day that they want to know something about who's running for office in my district, they can be like, oh, I know that website. I see their stuff all the time. So that's part of it. And then we do other things, you know, like we came to Fort Hays State and we did a voter registration drive. So I try to do things, especially with universities, because university students get it. This is the generation that the second I show them what we do online, they're like, oh, this is great. This is so cool. And when I went to some of the older, you know, kind of more established people in news, they were like, well, it's a neat thing, but gosh, you know, who watches news on the internet? And if you ask a classroom full of students, where do you get your news? Most of them will say on the web.
Absolutely.
You know, so it's kind of finding out what audience is receptive to us, what they're interested in, and as any news organization, you walk the line between you want it to be engaging and informative and somewhat entertaining. You don't want it to be a pain to go through. And that was one thing. In the beginning, I had these 5-minute, 10-minute long health, or not health, but policy interviews, thinking, oh, this would be so good, and it was just the most boring thing. And people would be like, I mean, my parents even were like, after a minute and a half, I had to turn it off. I couldn't watch it. So, you know, we went back to a traditional news package format, which there's a reason why news stories are 1:30 or 2 minutes, sometimes a little longer, and it's because they figured it out. It's what works. And so, you know, taking part of that knowledge of the traditional broadcast world and layering it onto the internet has been really valuable. I'm a member of the National Press Photographers Association, and that has been just a really good support system for, I mean, the people from 60 Minutes come out there in 2020 and talk about how do these are the people that knew Walter Cronkite, so they can talk about that world and still have a knowledge of the future.
Do you find that people in the traditional media, newspapers and television, tend to look down on internet-based journalists? Because that's kind of been the theme that we've seen for a while, is that they've seen it as a threat and so been very negative, but it sounds like it's been a little bit more open in your experience.
I would say that probably 80 or 90% of the people have been really welcoming. The news leaders are the ones that say, we get it, the world is going on the web. What can we do to be, 5 years down the road, like, what do we want to be? And instead of, this isn't what because there's a couple news organizations that were just like, well, we don't do the web. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's fine. But most of the ones that kind of want to stick around and that are the leaders in their, market, I think, are really thinking hard about what can they do. And so and most actual reporters have been really welcoming, because they understand. They see me out there with my camera and tripod all by myself, running around the State House. And so they saw pretty quick that, and my reporters, we all do it the same. Broadcast news is changing. You used to have a photographer and a reporter, and now you have to be one. That's called a one-man band, and that's been important too to keeping our costs low. Is you know, if I send you out with a camera, you know, I expect you to be able to write your own news story and, you know, probably edit it on the Final Cut software that we use too. So that's been part of it. And then the other side of it was, how do you make the revenue side come? And that's where we're slowly moving into that. We have a paywall, so we have members. And that's been always a question, is what do you put behind a paywall and what don't you?
Yeah.
Part of me always says, well, this is good for the public to know, so we want to make it as widely available as possible. But the other business side of me says we have to put some good things behind the paywall, otherwise the membership's not valuable. So there's that kind of tension. This campaign season, we've left the paywall down to a large degree, but we'll put it back up during the legislative session on State of the State. And then we sold our news content as well to Washburn University, ran it on their student news website too. So that was part of it. And the last piece of it is just the layering on advertising, which is now, as our numbers start, you know, kind of are starting to be large enough that advertisers would be interested in reaching our audience. For the first time, we can start to sell commercial advertising like you would see on a TV station.
So what's the future? We don't have a lot of time left, but in the time that we have remaining, where do you see the news media business going to? What's it going to look like in 5 years? Are we even going to recognize it?
I think that you'll see, like, I can only say for broadcast maybe. Well, I think for broadcast you'll see consolidation. I've never understood why there are 3 and 4 TV stations in one media market all covering identical stories, and they are. We watch each other constantly to make sure that no one's getting a story that we didn't. And so really, now there may be a little bit differences in quality of reporting and photography, but I would say that I don't understand why we have 4 TV stations camping out after the same house fire and car accident story. I think you'll see more niche news happening, where someone that I took the political niche, someone else might know the business world niche, or, I mean, the business journals kind of have that, but you know, they'll find it and then they'll figure out a way to make it the best quality product out there and beat everybody else who's kind of scrambling between news stories. I think newspapers are in the best position to become sort of dominant on the web. They have the print background. They're teaching their guys how to shoot video. A lot of their video needs to kind of, they would be wise to learn what the broadcast world already knows. There's a reason why, like, as I discovered, 1:30, 3 minutes would be maximum, you know, and right now a lot of news video you see is sort of very shaky handheld 5-minute things, and it's, you know, interesting, but it's not news stories. So, so I see those, once newspapers really embrace broadcast and put it on their website properly, the way you would see on a TV, you know, evening news, I think they'll become the leaders on the web. And we're in the Wild West of the web, of news. The dust is flying, and when it settles, when people are, they'll have picked where they get their news in the state, I think, and whether it's CNN or a newspaper or a TV station.
Very good. Thank you so much for coming out and joining me today. You can't have a democracy without an informed public. Democracies need information. News is the lifeblood of any citizen government. Critics may complain about the quality of online news, but it's people like Rebecca Zepick who are blazing a new trail as they try to bring quality news through the brave new world of online media. My thanks to Rebecca for joining me today on Talking Democracy. To view episodes of Talking Democracy or our schedule, please visit our website at kfhs.net or visit the Talking Democracy Facebook page for pictures, updates, blogs, and much more. Updates for Talking Democracy are also available on Twitter at Talking Dem. Thanks for watching Talking Democracy.